Hi, guys, and welcome to a pretty special episode of the Gimbal and Orange Show. We're talking today with Paul Challoner. Did I say it right, Paul?
You did.
Yes.
Perfect.
Paul Challoner, also known as ReDeYe, who is an incredible individual. And I have to admit, this is sort of a prelude to the first question that prior to seeing you in your WCS Europe and seeing you in the eSports Congress and a couple of recent events like that, where you were up on stage a lot, and we had a chance to really get to talk with you, or get to hear from you. I hadn't heard of you before, and then I started to, I saw your hosting, I saw your moderating, and thought, wow, he's really good. So I started looking you up, and lo and behold, you have a Wikipedia page that lists an unbelievable number of accomplishments. Can you sort of give us a quick breakdown of some of the things you've done in the past decade with competitive gaming, with esports, and sort of just tell us?
Uh, wow.
It's a big question.
Yeah. I mean, like most shoutcasters, commentators, I started as just playing. Um, and I was sort of mid 90s playing Quake World. Went into Unreal Tournament and then got asked by Clanbase to do some shoutcasting for them, and I'd never heard of it before when I started doing it. That was about 10 years, 11 years ago, and just did it for fun. And then 2004, 5, I think probably 2004, DJ Wheat asked me if I'd come and join ITG, which was inside the game, and then sort of took me under his wing and taught me lots of cool stuff. And we traveled the world for the next couple of years, doing all sorts of big events: WCG, ESWC, QuakeCon, CPL. Christ, I can't even remember. There's so many. And then CGS came along, and I did CGS for a couple of years until it shut down. And then I did some bits and pieces after that, some TV stuff, some mainstream stuff. And then I took a couple of years out. And then this year I've had the chance to come back and do some more stuff.
So I do want to spend most of this conversation really focusing on the esports congress and talking
Sure.
a lot about that. But I'm also sort of curious if the last decade of casting, of hosting, of being involved in competitive gaming, if there's a particular memory, a story or two that stand out for you is really really memorable. Do you care to share?
Good ones or bad ones?
Both are fine with me.
Yeah, there's loads. I don't know. There's so many over the years. I mean, where do you start? I've got tons of memories from different events and different people I've met and worked with, and loads of stuff. I mean, for me, until last weekend actually, um, WCG Singapore 2005, probably the greatest event I've ever been to. Just everything was great about it. Fantastic city, country was amazing, people were amazing, food was incredible, and then the experience of going out to Singapore and um, you know being on a stage and 4,000 people in front of you. That's the first time I ever did that to that kind of level. Working with Wheat, working with Tasteless, working with Tosspot, working with Nice Guy Ed, Bunny. There were so many great casters that weekend, and we had an amazing team of people. Pretty much doing it for amongst their first time. It was Tasteless' first big event that I remember. It wasn't my first big event, but it was one of the first 5 or 6 big events that I did, and I know we had done it for a few years. But yeah, that was a pretty special weekend. There was for Counter-Strike fans out there, there was an amazing moment where Shagwar, who's a really big Counter-Strike player for Team 3D, got knifed by one of the Australian guys, which was just nuts. Um, yeah, there was loads of stuff that weekend. It was just an amazing week of just being in an event. So that was pretty hard to top. Um, Stories wise, I don't know. I mean, there's so many. Seriously, I mean, just just so many funny stories
Well,
over the years, but
maybe
I
maybe I
can't
can
really pick one.
maybe I can rephrase. Let me see if it helps if I rephrase the question this way, and that is because you've had so many experiences that it's obviously hard to sort through them all. But is there a moment or an event like you pointed to a second ago that when you think of you say to yourself, "This is why I do competitive gaming. This is why I'm involved in esports. This is the best of
Every
it."
I know it sounds really corny, but every event, seriously, every event I go to, it's I almost have to pinch myself. And because I'm a bit older than the majority of the casters and the commentators and the players, I feel that sense of history a little bit more, I think. I feel it slightly deeper. I mean, when we did CGS, a lot of people won't know that, you know, forget all the bullshit about the fact that it was wrong or the rules were crap or the games were bad or whatever it is. Try and put that aside for a moment and imagine what it was like to have 60 players, all of the commentators, all living in one apartment complex with a swimming pool and a gym and a shop and all this cool stuff, and then spending 3 or 4 months of our lives together in that apartment complex and going to the beach every day and doing the things that we had to do before we went off to the studio. And you end up making a lot of really good friends. I made a huge number of friends in America doing the 3 months of that CGS show in the first year. And we came back for the second year. And I remember having a conversation, I think it was with Craig Levine, and it was along the lines of, we really need to appreciate these moments in time because they could just take it away from us at any moment. And lo and behold, those words turned out to be fairly prophetic, and they did. So I genuinely enjoy every single event I go to, almost as if it were my last, because you just don't know. You just don't know what you might be doing next. And that's the haphazardness of this business, if you like, because you don't know whether it's going to be the last event.
Well, can I ask, because I do want to make sure we have time to really get into this. I want to jump straight into the eSports Congress and kind of shift gears a little dramatically, but
sure.
Maybe just start off with the basics and tell us how you got involved with the eSports Congress and why you were chosen to be the moderator for that event.
So a couple of months ago, Thomas Hermanson from DreamHack contacted me and said that they were attempting to do something quite ambitious and put together a congress or a conference with all of the major players in the market, across all the developers, players, teams, tournaments and what have you. And what did I think about that? And B, would I consider being the moderator? And I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I'd love to do something like that. I mean, it's, you know, I've as well as commentating, I wouldn't say I've played any major role in esports or its growth, but I've always had a fascination with, you know, as a commentator, how do I push this to more people? How do I enthuse more people about the things I'm enthusiastic about? And this seemed like a great thing to do. I think it's been needed for a long time. I think a lot of people would find that they had more in common than maybe they thought they had, and that they had some things that they could agree on. And I love a challenge. So it really appealed to me. And then I think probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I started talking to Arturo, who is head of DreamHack in Spain, and he was the main point guy that was organising it all and setting it all up and what have you. And he pretty much gave me free rein around certain subjects. So he gave me the subjects for each part, and he pretty much let me come up with all of the questions. I had no restrictions on me. I wasn't told I couldn't ask this or I couldn't ask that. I was pretty much given free rein. And then on top of that, I was also told I had to do a keynote, which actually I was more nervous about than doing the panels. It's just, you know, I know I know it might sound a bit odd because I stand in front of people every week or whatever, and you know, you host out to hundreds of thousands of people and what have you, but standing in front of a couple of hundred people in a small audience doing a keynote speech about the history of video gaming and how we got to become shoutcasters was just, it was so nerve-wracking. So that was actually what I was more worried about than the panels, but yeah, that's pretty much how it came about.
Why do you think it is that we're just having this type of event, this type of gathering now? Or why is it that it's happening now? Maybe not why we didn't have it before, but why do you think it's happening now at this time?
I think because DreamHack were passionate about it. I think because they, this will sound really blunt, but it's not meant that way, but I think it's because they pushed people to do it and they agreed to pay for them to come in terms of their flights and their hotels, and they arranged everything. So they made it as easy as possible for people to come and not turn them down to come. And I know that many people did turn them down, and there was some, you know, there was nothing out of malice, but there was several people that were invited weren't able to make it, and that was a shame. But you know, I think I said on my blog, you know, if we wait until everyone's ready, this thing would never happen. So it was now or never, really. And I think it's just been something that's been needed for a long time. I think a lot of people agree that it's been needed for a long time, and finally it happened. So yeah, I think you can give some of the credit, or a lot of the credit, to the DreamHack guys.
So maybe starting with your keynote and then moving on to the panels, I just want to sort of get a sense of.
Do we have to?
Well, we can spend more time on one than the other. That's my caveat. We'll talk about the keynote for just a second, and then we'll go on the panels.
That sounds good.
Okay, but I just really, since I have you here, I have you captive. I want to get a chance to look inside your brain and know how you prepared, how you went about designing the keynote, what you were trying to get across, and how you feel after it. How successful you feel. There's anything you feel like you really left out or didn't, go in quite as strongly as you had intended.
I don't know. I originally it was like, can you do a talk on your history in gaming? And I was kind of like, oh, really? Like, I was like, how do I make that even remotely interesting? People are going to be bored after 5 minutes. So I don't know. I said to them, look, can I just do? And they were like, yeah, you know what? Just do whatever you want to do. So it's fine. So okay. So I then thought, honestly, I've never really paid tribute or thanks to the people that made a difference to me actually being able to do this and enjoy it. And I thought it would be nice to be able to just go back and give some props out, but I didn't want it to just be a hey, DJ Week's amazing and Tasteless is a cool guy. I didn't want it to be like that, but I wanted it to be passionate. And I wanted people to understand where I come from, but also where a lot of us had come from. It wasn't just me, it wasn't just it wasn't just Tasteless. There were tons of us guys around back then that all made the same sacrifices, all gave up time to do it, to get into it, to learn how to shoutcast, how to do radio setup, how to do audio setup, how to do streaming, all of this kind of stuff. And I just thought it would be a nice way of putting my version of history out there, because I don't think I made it clear, but this wasn't the definitive history of shoutcasting by any stretch. It was just the only stuff that I knew about. And seeing as I was relatively early on, I suppose, it seemed like a cool thing to do, and I thought I could make it interesting. I thought I could make it demonstrable in terms of just trying to show some of the newer fans that actually there was a whole load of history out there before them. That came before a lot of the guys that are now, and I don't resent them, by the way. I'm really glad that people are making a living from it, but I think it was just important just to acknowledge a few people that were really the reason that we were where we were, and then it turned into a bit more than that, and I actually had to come back from it because I ended up doing almost a history of eSports, and I'd got like 30 slides before I even got to 1999, and I thought, wait, this is too much. So I then canned a load of it again, started again from the start, and just included a few little bits and pieces, just a tip of the hat to people like Thomas Goldsmith, who he made the original CRT game in 1947, and talk a little bit about things like Pong and Space Invaders. And I was so fortunate to get sent a picture of the Space Invaders World Championship in 1980. I just thought it was such a cool photograph to include, because effectively it's like the first LAN tournament ever, and it's black and white, and there's all these wooden box TVs, and there's a little crowd behind them, and it was just, I just thought, that's sweet. We should totally acknowledge that was like the first ever LAN, because it was like 32 years ago. And we think of esports as being a fairly modern phenomenon, and really, it's not that new. Not really. So I hope that people were mildly educated from it, I suppose, but also that it gave me a personal chance to give some props to some people that are very important to me.
Mildly educated, I think, is quite the understatement.
I think it was quite nice that Dustin Browder actually came up to me afterwards and said that he loved the keynote, if only because it took him down memory lane, which for me was like, as a fanboy of Dustin Browder, it was like, that was kind of cool.
Just a little.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've asked you about the keynote. I won't push it. We'll move on to the panels, of which there were many. But so you said you had free reign with the questions. Did you have an overall vision for how you were going to go about creating questions for each panel, or did you look at each panel individually and say, what do I want to get out of this, or what do I want the audience? I mean, how did you approach the questions? I guess is really what I'm asking.
I am really, really sorry.
Yes.
Taser made it 2-2.
Taser made it 2-2.
2-2.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry, can you go over the question? I'm really, really sorry.
No, perfectly fine with me. Love tiebreakers. Okay, so yeah, my question is just when you're going into when you were preparing the questions for each panel,
yeah,
was there sort of an overall vision that you were trying to get at when you were making questions, or were you sort of looking at each panel individually, or how were you going about structuring what you were going to ask?
Well, there was each panel already had like an overriding question, so that was up on the schedule 4 or 5 weeks, I think, before the actual event. So there was an overarching question for the whole panel for 90 minutes, but you can't ask one question and expect 90 minutes of debate to happen. So I went out to the communities and I posted on Reddit, I posted on Team Liquid, I posted on numerous other sites across the internet because I wanted it to be an esports thing. It wasn't a StarCraft thing or a Counter-Strike thing or a Dota thing. It was literally just anyone that had an opinion. So I went and talked to the LoL guys, and D-Man very kindly put up a page in the LoL community as well, and I just went through all of that. I looked at my Facebook page, forums, different posts, went and got a few critical questions that people were posting elsewhere, and then I basically got this spreadsheet of questions, and I trimmed out some of the more kind of game specific ones because this wasn't the forum for that. I wasn't going to ask Dustin about is Zerg overpowered, for instance. I was trying to make them very esports centric, and so I trimmed all the questions down, and then once I'd got those questions, I then started placing them in the most appropriate panel where I thought either the people on that panel were best placed to answer it, or where I thought it would make more of an interesting debate, or where it matched the overriding question of the whole of that panel section. And then once I'd got that list, I then started to go through and trim a little bit, and then add some of my own questions in where I thought I could follow up on certain other questions, and turn to Twitter and just topped up the questions as I went along. And then I think I think it was Thursday night. I stayed up until about 3 or 4 a.m. Watching shows and watching some recent debates and watching Live on 3 and watching a whole host of other stuff just to kind of, people were talking about Valencia Esports Congress, so it was interesting to see what their perception was and whether they had any kind of, what were their goals, what did they want out of the panel, so that I could sort of take that with me, and then that would give me a bit more of a push to make sure I, asked the tough questions and pushed people to answer the questions properly rather than just letting them off the hook every time. But at the same time, having a balance of being polite and respectful and trying to keep them on track. So yeah, I think by pretty much Friday morning before I flew out, I was pretty much ready. There was probably a couple of weeks of evenings and what have you. I don't know how many hours, but it was a fair bit of preparation.
Can I ask you actually a more basic and general question? That is, going into this, what did you see as your role as a moderator? Like, what is the role as a moderator? What was your position? What was the point of you being there in the Esports Congress? What were you trying to achieve?
I think the main one was to push the debate along. It was to guide the panels if they weren't going the right way, and by that I mean, if one guy's talking all the time, then to try and spread it out so that you get different opinions. Right. It was to make sure no fights broke out, which luckily none did. Although I think the final panel was feisty, which was good. But it was, I think that was my main role. I think I had to be completely unbiased, completely independent, and I took the integrity side of the job very seriously because I have worked with a lot of the people on the panels, probably about 2/3 of the panel actually, in some form or another, and some closer than others. And yes, I had some friends that were on those panels. In fact, Stuart saw one of my very best friends, who was representing Owned, and I think he got the hardest time of the day. And so I hope that came across. I hope that people felt that I was as independent as I could be, and really act as, I don't want it to sound sort of too grandeur, but I sort of felt responsible for the fans. I felt responsible for eSports. You know, people that love eSports, and almost felt like the protector of it, if you like, and then wanted to make sure that those questions came out. And yeah, I didn't get to ask every question that I wanted, and sometimes there were questions where I thought, oh, I'd really like to know this, but I had to keep kind of checking in my brain, would anyone else enjoy the answer to that question, or would anyone else like that question? So sometimes there were questions I would like to have asked, but I didn't, because I just felt that they were maybe for personal gain or personal information rather than the communities at the wider heart of esports.
Is there one of those questions that you have wanted to ask, or you yourself had wanted to ask, or you had wanted to, as someone else you had crowdsourced and wanted to ask but didn't get a chance to?
I mean, I would have liked to have asked a couple of people about prize money payouts a bit more, but this wasn't the right forum. It wasn't the right forum to pick on anyone in particular. This was about taking esports forward and getting people to talk to each other and maybe understand a few of their issues so that maybe they could go forward. And even if the tournaments agreed to meet up once a month on Skype, then great, that's progress. It's more than we had before. So that was what I wanted to get out of it. But yeah, it would have been nice to be able to answer those questions, but it just wasn't the right forum. I don't think it was appropriate to attack people. Or attack one, but not attack the other 4 or 5 people that were on the panel. And right. I don't think there was any need to do that somehow. I mean, it wasn't I didn't see it as my role anyway. I saw my role as trying to get them to talk, and the more they talked and the less I did, then the better the debate would be.
I'm just curious what you think would be the appropriate forum for that sort of discussion, that sort of conversation.
I think one-on-one. I think you get some of these guys one-on-one on a I don't know, some sort of serious esports chat show of some kind. But then rarely would these kind of people come out and do those kind of chat shows. Certainly not without a PR agent alongside. So yeah, it's tough. It was a real balance.
Is there a most memorable question and answer from the panels that sticks out to you that for one? And I'm just curious if there is one and why it sticks in your mind.
I think the Matthew Dannon reply when he mentioned Beyond the Game made me laugh. If only because it was it's the WCG theme song.
Yes.
And saying it, so that was quite fun. The serious stuff. I don't think there was any particular one answer, but I think there was a number of people that articulated answers very well, and it made me kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I'd never really thought about it. I think Dustin Browder was one of those people. I think Sundance had a couple of moments where I just thought, okay, wow. I think Simon from CBSI was very, very intelligent with some of his answers, and that was quite insightful, I think, in terms of the way that TV look at us. Very promising as well. I think David Ting from IGN was also remarkably calm and very thorough with his opinion and with his, particularly because he was one of the few people to say, no, we don't need a federation right now. Maybe in 5 years or 10 years from now. That kind of stuck with me, and I saw that challenged my own perception of whether we need a federation. I've always thought maybe we did, and now I'm not so sure. Now I'm thinking, yeah, we probably do, but maybe we don't need one right now. Maybe we are okay. So I would say probably if there was one isolated answer, it would probably be that one.
Sort of going off of that, I'm curious if of the panels that you moderate, which is all of them, which do you see was the most productive? Or did you get the most out of? Maybe even whether the discussion was most productive, or you just found the most interesting or useful to you in your own understanding, your own thoughts.
I mean, I got something out of all of them personally, and I think everyone else hopefully did as well. I don't think there was any one that sort of majorly stood out or one that kind of bombed.
Right.
But I think the most interesting for me as a game developer type was the game developer one, and I know a lot of other people said to me afterwards, no, I didn't enjoy that one, that was quite boring, but I actually enjoyed that, and not just because I was fanboying Dustin, but it was interesting to see how passionate those guys are, coming from such a wide range of games, and yet I could tell anyway in the room that they love esports. I mean, Florent from Nadio, especially as it's not his first language, he's French, still managed to really inspire me about how passionate he is for esports. So that was a real eye opener for me. It was I didn't think we'd get that much out of that session, to be honest. In terms of esports, I was curious about it. So yeah, I'd probably say that one was, for me personally anyway, was the most interesting.
Well, I wanted to ask just a couple of questions, sort of as a way to start to wrap up the talk about the Congress. Looking towards the future, what sort of twofold question about what you would change or what you would do differently in, say, a Congress 2. One, just the format or the structure of the panels, sort of more generally about the Congress itself, but also in your own moderating, if there's anything else you sort of noticed that you felt like you would want to change.
I think I'd have a better internet connection. Yeah, I mean, I started to take questions from Twitter, and then we lost some internet towards the end, which was a real shame. But that, I think, if I could have got the community a bit more involved, or even had more reach before we did the Congress, or got people enthused about it better than I did this time. I think last time, this time I think I did okay with getting the message out there, but esports is so huge, and sometimes when we're in our own little bubble of StarCraft or Counter-Strike or whatever, we sometimes forget actually that there's hundreds of thousands of people out there that are all interested in the success of esports. And whilst I tried to reach many communities, I don't think I did a good enough job to reach all of them. And that became apparent to me on Twitter in the afternoon when we were deluged with questions that I hadn't got in my prep. So I think I would probably do that better next time and try and find a way of getting it out. But I think the fact that there's now more awareness of the Congress in the first place, hopefully in the next one people will be like, right, I've got a chance to ask the moderator, and I've got a real chance now of getting my question into his preparation so that it gets answered on the day. And I think the awareness will just be much higher next time round. Sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, the other part is about the overall structure of the Congress and the panels.
Yeah, so I would definitely have player representation next time. I think we. I don't know if we missed it this time, but I think I don't want to undermine what we did. I think the Congress is a great start, I really do, and I think it was very interesting for me, very interesting for a lot of other people. But I think ultimately the people that matter the most, and I'm not degrading tournaments or anyone else, but I think it's the players. And I disagree with people that said actually you couldn't have had players on there because they'd all be talking about you need to change this unit, you need to give me a different gun, the spray patterns is wrong, and I don't think they would have been like that at all. I think we sometimes denigrate players for having a lack of intelligence or maturity, and actually there's plenty of them out there who are very eloquent and very mature and do see esports from the big picture point of view and don't just look at it isolated to their maps and their games and their guns and what have you. And I'm pretty sure we can find 5 of them in the world and sit on a panel. And if we have to pick some of the old guard like White Ra and I don't know, a few of the old boys, then okay, we'll do that. But I'm pretty sure we can find 5 decent guys that want to talk about esports, not just their game. And we need to listen to them because, to my mind, they're the reason I enjoy esports. They're the, when you see new players coming along or old players doing well or whatever it is, it's the matchups you enjoy, it's the stories you enjoy. So what is it that they're missing? What do they want out of esports? What do they prefer to have their travel paid and a decent hotel and someone to pick them up from the airport and look after them and speak the language and chaperone them? Do they want that more than they want a big prize pool? Would they rather sacrifice 20 grand of a prize pool just so they handle all that? I don't know the answer to that, but the players probably do. And they probably have a view on that. Do they want a standard rule set across all tournaments? Do they want prize money paid out within 28 days? Do they want player contracts with teams that abided and lodged separately with a body? I don't know these things, and the players need to have a voice. And so I think that we, I say we, whoever runs the next Congress, should definitely have a player panel, and we need to listen to them. And I think it'd be interesting for all the other panelists to listen to the players, to see how they see esports progressing and what their role is in that.
Are there any other groups or that you feel like were underrepresented or not represented at all in the Congress that you would like to see besides the players?
Yeah, career is the obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite difficult for that to happen this time. I think for sure there are other sponsors that have put money in, Red Bull, Samsung, for instance, who are very big, large mainstream companies that for sure need representation on those sort of congresses. I think Riot, Valve were two of the major developers in eSport that were missing as well. They were invited, they couldn't send anyone, as far as I know anyway. So yeah, they need to be on there, and there were a few other key players as well in the tournament world that weren't there. A couple from North America, people from South America who weren't represented. There was WCG weren't involved. So there's, at the end of the day, if you wrote a list down of the top 100 most influential people in esports, we only got 25 of them. So there's still plenty of people out there that we can get along to another congress, and they absolutely should go, and they should absolutely get involved and have their voice and their say and their opinion.
Well, can I ask you, in your ideal world, in your ideal Congress, would you want a similarly sized Congress with people swapped out, or a bigger affair?
I'd have like a 2-day thing or a 3-day thing, and just get as many as we could to the events. And if we had, I don't know, 2 lots of tournament talks, one on each day or something, I don't know. But yeah, definitely bigger next time. And properly produced as well. I think this was so early. This is like the first ever kind of esports tournament back in 1995. That's what we're talking about right now. That's the equivalent of it. And I was glad that it was streamed, although I think it could be produced far better. But it's like Robert Olin said to me afterwards. What do you want? Frickin' lasers? No, not really. Like, but maybe a bit more production value.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully it didn't distract from it too much, but I think the sound issues were pretty horrible at times. But yeah, that I would do it like a TED. Yeah, that's how I see it. That's how I tried to do it in places and probably failed miserably. But yeah, that's how I would like to see it. I'd like to see a really, really big conference, opening up to lots of people, give out tickets free of charge to get people to come along and spectate and view, and someone in the crowd to ask questions of people in the crowd would be really good as well. We couldn't do that this time either, and that was technologically challenging for the people involved, but it's not that hard to do. And I'd like to see that come into play next time as well.
I was sort of curious about that because there were a couple panels that I missed, so I was wondering if maybe it happened there. But the ones I had a chance to see, I was sort of surprised that there wasn't.
There were 2 reasons really. One was that we'd never planned to do that in the first place. Therefore, we only had 6 mics, or 7 mics in all, I think. So it was difficult technically to do.
Yeah.
But the other one was that we hadn't asked any of the panelists either, and I think, again, out of respect, you don't invite 25 highly influential, powerful people to an event, and then throw in random questions from a crowd.
Right.
When you haven't told them that's what you're going to do, because they may not have come, they might not have consented to do that. And I think, as long as we make that quite clear next time, I think hopefully people will still come and we'll be able to do it. I keep saying we, but of course I don't know if I'll ever do another congress.
Sure.
I had to be this one, but I hope there's another one.
Sure. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's happening in the future, but I think it's a fair way to phrase it, given how heavily involved you were involved with the first one. I'm hoping we've probably got another 10 minutes or so, but I'm hoping I can pick your brain for just a couple of seconds, a little more generally about esports. Sort of, you talked about, or you referenced towards the end of our conversation a second ago about the Congress, about the success of esports, and it's phrases like that, or the legitimizing esports, those sorts of things. I think I get talked about often, but for you, what would be success? What would that actually mean?
I think we're seeing success this year. Now, I used to think that before CGS, I used to think that the esport would be a success if we managed to get it on mainstream TV regularly. And then we did that with CGS, and it didn't work. And then we came out of the back end of CGS, and things were a little grim. Actually, they were quite grim for a few people. And I think it made me think that maybe we didn't need mainstream. It was one of the questions I posed to the media panel. Do we need mainstream? And they agreed we didn't. I think we undersell ourselves in esports. We as a group of people are very pioneering. And if you look at what TV are doing right now, all across North America or across Europe, in the UK in particular, all the TV stations are now trying to work out how they capture an audience online. Because they know that people just don't watch terrestrial TV in the same numbers that they used to 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. They know that the likes of you and I watch TV differently. We watch it on replays, we watch it on YouTube, we watch it on streams, we watch it on video boxes, streaming boxes. We watch it everywhere other than the TV. And they need to turn on to that, and they've started to now. And guess what? We've been streaming for 7 years. Hello? So I think actually maybe I was a bit deluded back in 2006 to believe that we needed mainstream TV. I don't think we do anymore. I think we need coverage. I think we need, the likes of CBS to come in and do a 30-minute segment on how cool is this tournament, and for SVT in Sweden to do their weekly shows. And I think they're fantastic. I'm not saying that they shouldn't come in or that we don't benefit from it. I think we do. But do we need it to be successful? No, hell no. You look at the size of the figures on these stations now, it's incredible. We just had 66,000 on my screen on the left of me, watching a Terran versus Terran in StarCraft 2, two Koreans that most of the Europeans have never even seen before, play out DreamHack Valencia. 66,000 people tune in. Last weekend we did WCS Europe Fund, we had over 130,000 people tune in all languages. 130,000 in TV world, and I'm sure everyone knows this, but 130,000 viewers is like a small TV show on a mainstream television station. So no, we don't need that. We're already there. We're already getting the numbers. We thought when we were getting 12, 15, 20,000, that the reason we didn't get any more than that was because A, we were technologically challenged, and B, there wasn't enough people interested. We were wrong. We were absolutely wrong. And thanks to Twitch and Owned for giving us the opportunity to do these things now on streaming means that we actually started to find that out. I think the figures from MLG Rally were something like 400,000 plus concurrent. And I know that I've been at a couple of IEMs this year that have had 250,000 concurrent connected people at any one time. That's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I think that's probably more than the CGS went out to on mainstream TV. So no, I think that's your original question, success. I think we're having success now, and I hope that it continues.
So if we're having success, how do we? Well, if we're having success, what's the eSports Congress for? Is it to solidify ourselves and make ourselves stable, or what is it?
Well, the stability is one of the things it should look at doing, but it's about trying to bring people together and trying to get people to kind of figure out how do we go to the next level. And the next level for me would be, a Masters tour, or something that replicated the Grand Slams in tennis or golf, or Formula One, where next week's the American Open, and I want to win the American Open because that's really prestigious. Or it's the American Masters, and I want to win that Masters. And it just so happens that it's an MLG event that's the Masters this year. Next year it's an NASL Masters. The following year it's an IPL hosted Masters of America. And then we have all over the world. We have the United Kingdom Masters, we have the Spanish Masters and the Swedish Masters and the Chinese Masters and the Korean Masters. And over the year it's a complete set of Grand Slams or Masters or major tournaments or whatever you want to call them, that are all running the same rule sets, that all have similar levels of prize money, but can also run their own tournaments in their own right with their own sponsors, generating their own income and making their own businesses work. And I think maybe that's a realistic way forward. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but
sure.
One idea of how we could go to the next level and get more major sponsors involved, mainstream sponsors involved, to put that money in. And Simon Whitcomb from CBS said that the advertising money that we have right now is a drop in the ocean compared to what it could be. And so we already know that we've still got plenty of work to do. But your question was, are we successful right now? Yeah, I think we are. But we could be so much more successful.
Can I ask you this again? Some of these questions are probably going to seem a little strange, but with the eSports Congress and this idea of coming together to collectively figure out how we move forward, why is it that because I just remember we've done some other interviews in the past. I think I believe most notably with John Clark of CSN, who he made the argument to us that he thought each scene should develop individually, and each competitive game gaming scene should develop individually and decide for itself how it wants to move forward, as opposed to collectively all coming together and saying this is how we all should do it. So why do you think it's important we unify?
I think John's got a good point. I mean, if you're talking about federations, I would actually agree with him. I think it's much better to have a League of Legends federation or a Counter-Strike federation or a StarCraft federation. I think that makes more sense, because you can then go to the tournaments and say, this is the rule set you should use. This is the prize money we want you to use, and you can do that. But then they have an umbrella, and that's all I'm talking about, is the umbrella over the top of all of that, which just helps them all work together, and so that you don't become a League of Legends player and you only get a chance at $50,000 a year, or you can become a StarCraft player and have a shot at $500,000 a year. That to me doesn't seem right. And I know people will go, oh my God, StarCraft's more skillful and League of Legends sucks. And that's not the point. The point is, we're talking about players in eSport. We're talking about athletics, if you like.
Right.
And that means, so Usain Bolt will earn more money by going to a Diamond League track meeting and running 100 meters for 10 seconds than someone else doing the 10,000 kilometers like Mo Farah will earn less. And I sort of look at that and go, well, that's a bit weird. And that's all I'm talking about. Is that weird that a League of Legends player earns more money than a StarCraft player, or a Dota 2 player earns more than a Counter-Strike player? I don't know. But what I'm saying is that, I think John's right. They should all have their own federation. They should all figure it all out themselves. They're the experts. But there's no harm in coming together and sharing that kind of knowledge and potentially sitting under one umbrella. And it's what you see in Formula One. The FIA controls motorsport. It's effectively the world motorsport governing body. Does it make the same rules for F1 as it does for MotoGP? No, because they're different sports. But they're still under one umbrella. They still have the same commercial entity. They still have the same commercial goals. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
So, Paul, as a way of wrapping up, you've talked a lot about what you talked about the Congress and sort of what you got out of it and what you hope others got out of it and sort of where you want to see it move forward. But I'm sort of curious, in general, outside of the Congress, you've also talked about the idea of this larger umbrella organization that you want to see happen. How do you see yourself, or how would you like to be involved in the moving forward, Congress?
I honestly don't know. I don't necessarily think that I would be involved. I come up with ideas, and I'm happy to kind of input with those, and throw a few debates out there for people to argue about and talk about. I don't feel strongly that we need. Let me put it another way. I don't feel as strongly today as I did Thursday that we need a federation and we need it now. The Congress kind of changed my mind about that, and I also think I've got a much more realistic view now, having heard a lot of the different points of view and the people involved, and I can see why there are some stumbling blocks. But that doesn't mean that I won't give up on the idea that we need more. I was going to say regulation, but that sounds terrible. Coordination, I think, is probably the better word. We do need it. There's no doubt about it. If you think about why would someone like Richard Branson in video gaming and eSports, he would do it if there were a governing body. He would do it if we were more organised and there was something more recognisable, such as a Masters Tour or whatever. Right now, does he know who to go to? I don't know if he does, and that puts companies like that off.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that we absolutely have to have a federation, or that it needs to happen now, or that leagues should have their own little federations. The only thing I will say, and this is something I really do believe, is the players should have their own association or a union, and that does need to happen sooner rather than later. Cozy, that was your original question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't know.
That's fine. No, I was already trying to think of my follow-up question, because I was trying to remember the name in StarCraft of the Korean team association, and if you thought that was that sufficient, or does it really need to be players independent player association independent of teams?
Yeah, independent of teams. Yeah, so that let's listen to them. Let's see what their their quibbles are. Are they worried about contracts? Are they worried about salary caps? Are they worried about treatment? Are they worried about prize money not being paid out? What are they worried about? What do they need protection from? These are young guys. These are guys without very much business acumen or experience in the real world. And through no fault of their own, they just happen to be talented gamers, and they're out there 16, 17, 18 doing this thing and not a care in the world, frankly. They're just enjoying what they're doing. But I don't want them to be exploited. And I've seen a lot of players exploited over the years, and a lot of people take advantage of them as well. And I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As we close it, are there any shout outs you'd like to do?
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. Keep going on with the show, and thanks for tuning in.
Perfect. And real quick, for those who want to follow you, keep up with what you're doing and what you will be doing, how can they do it?
Twitter's probably the best place. I'm chatty as hell on there, so if you want spam, then follow me at Paul Challoner, all one word.
Perfect. All right. Thank you again, Paul. And to everyone who's tuned in, or I guess is watching this on the VOD, thank you for giving this a watch. And comment and tweet at us. Let us know what you thought. What your thoughts are on the Congress, what you'd like to see, and of course, follow Paul and let him know your response to the Congress, what you got out of it, and your again what you'd like to see in the future, or what you think of the idea of an overarching umbrella organization. But that's it for us. We'll catch you guys later.